Motii acknowledges the traditional owners of country throughout Australia. We pay our respects to elders past and present and acknowledge Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples as the first peoples of this land. Welcome to the Motii Playbook. If you've ever felt like your systems are technically in place, but somehow still feel chaotic behind the scenes, you're in the right spot. This is where we share what we're seeing, what's working, what's not, and the lessons businesses learn the hard way. Think of it as practical strategy straight from the trenches. Let's dive in.
Welcome back to another Motii Playbook mini episode, our short, sharp answers, sometimes not always short, but they're good answers.
Sometimes not sharp either.
To the questions that we get asked the most. I'm Katie, marketing and brand strategist for Motii, and I'm joined again by Motii's original co-founder and CRM expert, Ben Fuller. Welcome back, Ben.
Thank you for having me again.
You're welcome. Last mini episode, we talked about ROI, return on investment, how long it takes to get your return on investment from CRM, why implementations fail and whether you actually need a partner or can go it alone. And this episode, we're going to pull back the curtain on an actual implementation process. So we'll talk about what does it look like, how long does it take, and what can you do right now if you're a business owner considering a CRM before you actually even speak to anybody. Sound good?
It does sound good. I'm looking forward to it. I think this is probably one of the things that stops people, right, from going ahead with a CRM implementation, which is, what am I in for, I suppose? And it's actually one of the most common questions. Like, everyone wants to know, what are the resources that I have to allocate for this? How much time of mine do you need? And so I'm sure we'll get into all of that stuff, but I think that this is a sorely needed point of discussion.
Yeah, awesome. And I think you're right too, because it's that unknown factor, right? It can seem a bit like it's looming there. So we'll get into the first question. Let's talk about, what does a CRM implementation actually look like when you work with a partner? Okay,
so let's start from the top in a sense, where I'll do a demo, right? So for those listening, I do half of Motii's sales, right? And so I will do a demo where I will get an understanding of the business, and then I'll put together a proposal and I'll send through the proposal, and the proposal will be signed. Once the proposal's signed, Motii issues a deposit invoice, usually for 50% of the project. And once that's paid, we book in a kickoff meeting. The kickoff meeting is all about making sure that we've got access to the systems that we need, that we are aware of the data that needs to come into the system and where it might be sitting, that we understand the business, and we start diving into some of the sales and post-sales processes and everything like that, so we can get a really good idea of what we might be building inside of the business. And so everything I've described there, right, happens before the end of the first 45-minute kickoff meeting, right? So we're 45 minutes into the project, essentially, by the time we've done all of that.
And we call that probably the discovery phase, like where we're really like understanding everything.
Yeah, it's the discovery phase. And then usually in that meeting, the client that we're working with will want to know what resources they need to assign to the project. And my answer to that is generally we will need at least one meeting a week, 1 hour a week, plus you'll need to do another hour of prep or work on top of that to provide us what we need to be able to continue progressing your project at the speed that you expect.
Yep. And that's like the configuration phase. Is that what we call it? So we've done like the discovery, and then we're starting to actually get into it and like build the structure, and that involves understanding it in great detail in a more micro level. Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes prior to the kickoff meeting, we will ask them to send through an export of their existing database, whether that exists in Excel or whether it's an export from whatever. Say we're doing a HubSpot migration or a Salesforce migration, we will maybe sometimes before the kickoff meeting go into Salesforce or go into HubSpot, do a sample export so that we can talk through what we're seeing, because for CRM implementation people like us, the data tells the story of what the setup's going to look like. And a lot of people are very wary of this because they are saying to us, hey, I'm moving away from HubSpot or I'm moving away from Salesforce because I don't like the way it's set up. I don't want you to use that as the basis for the build of this system. And look, you also need to know the industry that they're operating in, right?
Yes.
Who they're selling to. These are good, like this is a good segue into what do we talk about in that kickoff meeting? Because it is things like, what do you sell? In what industry? To who, for how much, and how often, and how much of that is new business versus existing business, and where do you put those quotes together? And like it just flows through all of those questions, right? And all of that is surfaced in that discovery or that kickoff meeting so that the next phase, which is the configuration phase, I think you called it before, or the implementation phase, so that goes as smoothly and as quickly as possible.
Yeah. And I mean, we talked about it in a previous mini episode as well, is that a lot of the implementation process, or at least the beginning part of it, is really understanding the sales process itself, not the system, the software, because you can't build that out until you understand it in detail. And that's why there's so many questions, and it has to be a collaborative approach.
Yep. And the other important thing I think, Katie, in this meeting is we're also providing education and training, even in the kickoff meeting, right? Because we're talking about the difference between having a stage in a pipeline, for example, versus creating an activity for whatever that might be, right? And we're trying to talk the client down a lot of the time from having 15 stages in a pipeline, right? Because you might only need 8
things.
You might need 8 stages and then 6 activities that are created at different stages to do things. And so it's about training at that same time during that kickoff meeting.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. We start with the discovery. So you're having all these questions. You're starting to configure and actually do the implementation. Then you've got the actual data migration. That's when that's going to happen, is after the understanding and the checking it.
So there's 2 or 3 phases to the data migration. The first is getting the data out of whatever system it's in or systems that it's in, right? So that's the first bit, and getting it into a spreadsheet, an Excel sheet. The second phase is importing sample data. This can happen quite early in the setup phase. So after the discovery session generally, but get, let's say 10 companies, 10 opportunities or deals, 10 persons into the system so that when we do the second meeting or the third meeting after discovery, we can show the system with actual data for the client sitting in the system, because I think we spoke about it on an earlier episode. It's so much easier for someone to wrap their head around what's going on when they can see names that they're familiar with inside of the system.
Yeah, you're making it real and you're taking out of that theory.
So there's the sample data import, right, which is not the full data set, but a subset of a cohort of that data. And then generally the full data migration happens only a day or 2 maximum before we go live. And the reason for that is in whatever other system they're using, whether it's HubSpot or a spreadsheet or whatever, they are continuing to use that and update that while we build Pipedrive. And if we take, let's say, 4 weeks from start to finish, we can't import the data that we exported 4 weeks ago.
Because it's out of date now.
Yeah, it'll be out of date by the time they go live, and the most recent information is not there. And so we generally have to do that go live data import the day before we actually go live. And look, that's always a nerve-wracking thing, right? You're dealing with a lot of data and you've got to get it into the system and make sure that everything goes right, and make sure that we have so many checks and balances in place for this these days. And we're very good at it now. Like we don't make mistakes anymore. We very rarely make mistakes, and we catch them if we do. But yeah, that's probably, I think, from a CRM implementation perspective, that final data migration is the most nerve-wracking for an agency, at least.
Oh, for sure. It makes sense. And then you did mention that you've got training that's happening like along the way, because obviously it's almost like sales process training happening in conjunction with the software. And then after you do go live, training happens afterwards as well. I know you do video recordings and then
so let's say, again, the training there's maybe, let's call it 3 parts. One is during the implementation, we like to sort of have what we call a champions team, right? They're the champions with the CRM. They don't have to be the senior management, often the best people are the people that others go to inside of a business to ask questions on how things work, right? And sometimes that's an administrator that's been there for 15 years that knows absolutely everything. Or sometimes it's like a salesperson who's just a great communicator and has a good relationship with everybody, right? Rather than the sales manager. And so that champion, whoever they are, a single person or multiple, they are sitting in on most of the meetings that we have week to week with the client. And also we will do a dedicated training session for that champions group, generally speaking. So that happens prior to go live. And then in the lead up to go live, we will make the video-based training manual. And this consists of, let's say, 15 videos, but there's usually 2 or 3 videos that we will insist that the broader team watches before we do the first of the training sessions as we push live. The reason we get them to watch the video-based training manual, or some of the videos, is that if people haven't seen Pipedrive before and we're doing a training session for the first time, they sit there all starry-eyed wondering what the hell they're looking at and try to orientate themselves inside of the system. Whereas if they've watched 2 2-minute videos that explain what's going on, they can then focus in on the important things, ask the right questions, and take more of the session in, take more on board, and leave the session actually with more knowledge than what they went into it with.
Yeah. It becomes a practical session instead of just, once again, like theoretical, like, oh, I've got an idea of what it is, but you're like, oh, that's how it's used. That's what we need to do. And so then they're live, they're using it, and implementation is done. They're at that place.
Well, no. You want feedback, right? Like sometimes silence is golden. It means everyone's loving it. But sometimes silence is not golden, and it means that no one's using it, which is even which is the worst case scenario, right? Yeah, where there's no adoption and you're not seeing the deals being created and things like that. And so we do keep a really close eye on the system after we push live to make sure that contacts are being created, deals are being created, deals are moving along the pipeline. We check that everyone's got their email synced, all of those little things, right, to make sure that adoption's there. And we want to make sure that no soldiers left behind as well, right? So we can keep an eye on, and we go into the system and we check the login times and stuff. And so sometimes, let's say there's 10 users that have been onboarded. There might be 1 or 2 users who haven't logged in a week, and that sets off alarm bells.
Yeah. So I guess that sort of leads to my next question. You know, how long does the implementation actually take? And I suppose the easiest part of that question, which to define, is up until the go live point. And after that, some need more, you know?
So I would say traditionally for Motii, you're looking at 4 weeks for a typical Pipedrive implementation, up to 8 weeks for a Pipedrive implementation that's got a NetSuite ERP platform integration and a whole bunch of other stuff going on, right? So 4 to 8 weeks. Now, the caveat here is we are reliant on our customer to be responsive and to provide the information required.
Because it is a collaborative approach.
100%. And sometimes, like, if they haven't cleaned the data and we can tell they haven't cleaned the data, and we've done as much cleaning as we can on our side, and we need someone within the company to go through because we don't know certain things about the data set. We will have to postpone a go live because we're not going to bring dirty data into the system. And sometimes they're like, oh yeah, we haven't started that yet. And it takes them 2 or 3 weeks. And all of a sudden it goes from 6 weeks to 9 weeks. And you're like, oh God.
But in the ideal situation where you've got that really good collaboration between the client and yourselves, it's actually quite an efficient process. It can happen quickly. It does come down to, you know, that data. And I suppose, getting back to what we just talked about before, too many stakeholders, because if there is a disagreement around what the sales process should be, if you can't nail that down, then you can't build the system around it. And that will be, that complicates things too, right? Too many cooks spoil the broth for sure.
And I think the other thing, Katie, is inside of Motii as well, we are beginning to make some changes to get what I would say is the majority of our clients up and running more quickly. Right?
And
in a more simple fashion. So sometimes you don't have a choice, right? If there's a NetSuite integration that must be part of the system, then that has to be there for go live. Other times, though, what we're trying to do these days is if we have the option, we will get a nice simple system set up and a training session done and the users in the system, sometimes within a week or within 2 weeks and up and running.
Yep.
And then we will add a phase 2, which we call the first phase is sort of core pipe drive. Phase 2 is the growth phase. And phase 3, which might come a month or 6 weeks down the track, is fine tuning, right? And so rather than delivering all of those phases up front over, say, 6 weeks, they're delivered over maybe 6 to 10 weeks. But the first phase particularly, and getting them into the system, can happen within a week.
And which is priceless, because that's really it's not beta testing, but it's the real life use of the system, and it matters. That's where you can fine tune and learn how people are using it.
Yeah, and if the client is willing to come along for the ride with you with that, they end up with a better system, right? Because you're getting the feedback on the way through. Plus the client, after using it for only a week, has a way better feel of how this thing's actually going to act inside of their business. And they're able to give you some really deep, really in-depth, quality feedback on what will and won't work for them. And some of the things that they thought were set in stone in their mind and must happen, all of a sudden, when they see the system in action or feel and play with the system, they're like, oh, okay, that doesn't matter. I'm happy not to do that. You're like, sweet. Let's set that aside then. We'll worry about that maybe down the track. It could be part of the fine-tuning phase. You add that as an item to the fine-tuning phase. You do come back to it, see if it's still important then or not important then. And it makes for a better system. It honestly does.
Yeah. It's more of an agile way of doing things, isn't it? Where you can actually iterate as you go, but you're getting that really good solid system up and running early so they can start actually using it, which is where the value happens. So that's amazing.
Yeah, things can easily be over-engineered before someone's even laid a finger on a keyboard. And so this way that we're working with some clients now sort of saves that. It means that you're not over-engineering before you get started.
Love that. It's going to be exciting to see how that rolls out too. But So is there anything that somebody who is considering embarking on a CRM implementation with say Motii or with a partner, is there anything that they could really be doing to prepare?
Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff. I wouldn't sweat any of it, right? If you want to do the demo meeting first and then get a list of things that you should be doing out the back of that, by all means, that's a valid approach and maybe the best approach. But if you want to get prepared a little bit to get the most out of that demo, that initial consultation, a little bit of a visual chart of your sales process is good. Again, don't sweat it, but just and a little bit of an outline of that, and be ready with the answers to the questions like, what industries do you guys operate in? Who are your customers? What do they buy? How much do they spend? When do they buy? How often does that occur? What do you do once a sale is signed? Is there a post-sales administrative flow? Like, you should be able to, most people can answer these questions off the top of their head, right? Those businesses that are a bit more of a mess, then maybe, again, it's hard, Katie, like whether or not, to be honest, I'd probably rather be dictating to them the information that I need rather than them imagining what that might be.
But I mean, if they have it, they can like do a rough sketch, they can use a Miro board or whatever, just even like be ready with those insights and see how they go. But it's not necessary because you can actually sort of work through it as well. So you do need to know how things are operating, but also like what's not working right now. That's so valuable, right? Like what's broken in your systems? What are you struggling with? Where's your team struggling? Because that's where the solution lies, right?
Yeah. So the question is like, why are you reaching out to us, sort of thing, or whatever variation of that it is, right? Like why are you considering a CRM now? Why are you considering Monday now? Why are you considering Pipedrive now? Yeah. And that answer, I think the answer to that question is probably the most informative for me. And usually it comes down to reporting, data segmentation, accountability. Those three things are always float to the top of that probably quite long list of items, but those three are super important.
Yeah, makes sense. So I guess at the end of the day, the best thing that you can do if you want to and you're considering rolling out a CRM and working with a partner is actually just start the conversation.
Yeah. I would, to not waste anyone's time, right? Most of all your own time, book a consultation and have the discussion and ask whoever it is that you're talking to, okay, what's the next thing you need from me to be able to, A, maybe provide me with a proposal, or B, understand more about my business so that you can get a bit further down the track to providing me with a proposal. Because like at the end of the day, it's not only the solution that's being provided, but you've got to be comfortable with the cost, not only of the subscription of whatever platform it is, but the cost for the agency like Motii and everything like that. You've got to be comfortable with that. Which is why, like, we publish our price list. I share it with everybody so that everyone knows, hey, I'm paying the same price as Bob over there for exactly the same stuff, and I'm not being priced based on my ability to spend.
Yeah.
Which I think makes people comfortable in working with us because they know that, hey, all of these prices are fixed.
It's just all up front. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. So bottom line, have the conversation. You don't have to have it all sorted. Just start the conversation so you'll be able to get into it. Yeah.
Yeah, by all means, it's the best approach.
Yes. Awesome. Well, we've done it again. We've not made a mini episode very mini, but that's okay. It was extremely valuable. So that is all for us for now. Until our next episode. Thank you, Ben. Thank you for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Katie. Cheers. Thanks for having me on again.
And thanks for listening. Bye.
That's it for another episode of the Motii Playbook. One shift, one system, one measurable improvement. All information shared in this podcast is general in nature. For tailored advice specific to your business, visit motii.co/playbook and book a momentum call with our team. See you next time.